The science of murder, the analysis of dangerous new psychedelic drugs, and the fingerprints and trace evidence left behind by suspects at crime scenes are just some of the topics that I'm going to be discussing with a panel of forensic science investigators later this month. And you can come along for free. A special public event to celebrate 50 years of Forensic Science Ireland is going to take place at the National Convention Centre in Dublin on May 28th. The doors are at 6 p.m. and tickets are available now on eventbrite.com. Don't miss it. Yeah, there's actually going to be a little bit of a crackdown, I would think, or maybe there is being, you never know for a while what's happening in the background that causes a bit of violence. But at the Costa Blanca, we've had a lot of criminal activity. Now, we all know that the Costa del Sol in particular, and also the Costa Blanca, have been sort of a second home for criminals from both the UK and Ireland for a long time. And they carry out a lot of their drug dealing activity down there. And they like to live there because it's sunny and, there's a big, huge community of them to mix from business and pleasure purposes.
Yeah, sunny and cheaper probably to live than in Ireland. Certainly some of the criminal activity that goes on from the expat community, the Irish and English, I think the Spanish police sometimes, haven't been all over it, let's put it that way. But certainly Portabanús, where the Canoons were based, was kind of the millionaires' playground. Isn't that what we used to call it? But some parts of the Costa Blanca wouldn't qualify as that, I don't think.
Well, no, Alicante is really, really nice, actually, the city. Yeah. And then there's lots of tourist accommodation around that and, all up along that coast. But this particular area that we're talking about, which is near the Xenia Boulevard shopping centre, which is in a place called Orihuela, and it's the same location where we saw the shooting of John George, the big investigation around that, his family going out there just before Christmas to try and, agitate to have his body found. Of course, his body is found. He's been shot dead. And there's been arrests made in connection with that. At the same time, you also had John Gilligan being arrested and jailed, and he is awaiting his case to develop there. He's caught in a sort of a drug factory, essentially, with another group of people. And now there's been a shooting, which has taken place outside at night on May 13th, coming up to tourist season big time, in an area close to that Xenia Boulevard again. So it's all sort of happened within a very, very short space of time. Now, do we have a new sheriff in town who's out policing? And that could cause, well, I'm not claiming in any way, shape or form that a new sheriff will cause shootings, but sometimes if there's crackdowns on criminal gangs and if they're broken up or some of them are jailed or whatever, opportunities emerge and younger in particular people can try and move into the arena. We don't know what's happened here other than we know there's a young man in critical condition and there's been 2 arrested.
Yeah, just 2 people arrested, a 27-year-old and a 45-year-old. They're both described by the Guardia Civil as being Irish nationals as well. So certainly there's been an uptake in criminal activity for sure. One of them, the older of the men, is the person who's been remanded in custody. The other person was arrested, and the victim is said to be in critical condition, even because the actual shooting is almost 2 weeks ago at this stage. So it was one of them that wasn't particularly reported. Certainly wasn't reported as being an Irish national at the time. So the full details aren't known. But Guardia Civil have put out a video. You can see it as well, where they've recovered a handgun, ammunition, and the victim's telephone. And both of them were arrested on attempted homicide, and one of the homes was searched. So it's certainly that area has certainly hit the news. We also had other cases like Barry Young, of course, had a home around there at one point searched. He was also suspected of maybe moving in those circles while he was over in Spain. Barry Young, obviously currently in prison in connection with running a crime organisation, a Sligo gangster, and various other people. I mean, there was other people that had links to the Drogheda feud who were drifting over there, other people as well that had come from some of the Coolock feuding that had ended up in that part of the world.
You have Kinahan's, associate Fat Tony Armstrong living there. And of course, he was suspected of and questioned in relation to the disappearance of the Westies many years ago. They were found buried under a concrete, in concrete in a warehouse, actually. And all of that was going on. There is definitely activity in the area, but the last 3 incidents that we've been talking about have really happened in a small, I mean, you're talking a couple of streets.
Yeah.
And of course, the murder of John George did sort of unveil this low-level drug dealing that was going on there. I mean, was that stuff that was being sent back to Belfast, to the north? He was believed to have gone out and was associating with a group of kind of, a crew that were living a sort of, they were, where would you call them? Mid-range?
Yeah, I mean, these aren't people that are dealing with container shipments coming across the from South America or anything like it. But certainly in the John Gilligan case, you're talking multiple millions of what was described as pink cocaine. So you're dealing with big shipments. There was also,
yet you're dealing with him, and while he might have been dealing with that amount of that drug, he had not got the lifestyle or the money to show that he was making that kind of money. I mean, you'd wonder where he sat in that whole.
Yeah, I mean, the Spanish police seem to have put him up near the top, but if you see...
Because of his history, of course.
Yeah, but if you see the notes that were taken from the arrest scene where you see John Gilligan talking in hundreds of euros rather than, or thousands, but never tens of thousands or anything like that. I mean, even earlier this year, there was another Irish man arrested on the Costa Blanca. And again, like Gilligan, he was suspected of dealing with a lot of Eastern European criminals. He was arrested on suspicion of running a drug dealing operation from that part of the world. So there certainly seems to be those ties in with these. In that case, it was actually guys from Czech Republic, but with John Gilligan's case, they were from the other parts of the Baltics. So there certainly seems to be, a conglomerate of criminals there.
Politically, what happens in Spain on both the Costa Blanca and the Costa del Sol is, tourism is just such a big business. Like, it's the economy there, really. And they don't like, they will say, and it has been, I certainly would believe it myself, that the police will turn a blind eye to a certain amount of criminal activity because there is so much of it.
Yeah.
It's like, shooting fish in a barrel, trying to find out, or to pick who to target. But at the same time, they will really crack down or move in if there's gun violence, because that really puts the tourists off.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in Portabanús or in that general area, there's been, it's become a big political issue for local politicians, the level of gun crime there. I suppose like any part of the world, crime becomes politics when people are running for election. And that is their focus on the fact, like, while the Irish criminals certainly in or around Portabanús have become less prominent, certainly when the Kinahans were at their peak in that part of Spain, they controlled everything. But there certainly has been a lot of shootings, there's also been a lot of these kind of kidnappings where criminals are kidnapping other criminals, and there's disputes over drugs. Even recently, there was a young man shot coming out of a gym, just on in that sort of general area. So all of that has become very political. But the Costa Blanca has maybe not hit the sort of the political side of it just yet, but of course it will.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we just feel that because everything seems to be coming back to the Irish, but there is a big population of them out there. Nonetheless, we need to go back and see what's happening with John Gilligan.
We do. And
time.
Yeah. And these
reminded me.
Yes. And you will find, like, because there is a lot of people over there, Irish and English expats in general, huge amounts. But no matter what, the criminal underworld, it's still relatively small. I mean, so if you have people living in this one geographical area, especially people of that type, it does all become this amazingly interconnected kind of web, doesn't it, ultimately? Because and the other thing about these criminals is they're very gossipy and they're all in each other's business.
And I suppose most importantly to say in relation to the victim of the latest gun attack, while we're talking around organised crime, we do not know the identity of this man, nor have we any evidence whatsoever to suggest that he is involved in anything to do with criminality. We're just talking because there has been a gun attack and because of the other sort of crimes related to the general area.
Yeah, and obviously the two people arrested, the older man, he has been he's still in custody. He has appeared in court. We've spoken about it many times. It's a slightly different system. In Spain, he would be considered a formal person of interest. The other man has been released, but he's on bail. He's not allowed to leave the country. So it's certainly that investigation is progressing, and it's not just at that stage where suspects are just taken in and released without charge.
I'm sure they're enjoying better weather than we are here.
No doubt.
That because it's so cold. I have my jacket on. That's the aircon, of course.
It's the aircon.
We have to keep on to keep us awake.
Keep us awake, Nicola.
Yeah, I know.
Not bad.
All right. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.